Page 119 to 120. Answer time: yeah, it's Ronald Reagan. He's the president guy. Marty reveals this information while nodding somewhat ruefully, and Doc calls the whole thing insane and picks up his now intact brainwave analyzer, which is also insane. He smashed it into smithereens just 3 pages ago, but haha, continuity across 3 pages? Why not ask for the moon while you're at it, and tries to leave the room. Marty does his weight. You were hanging a clock and hit your head just this morning thing, except now he says after the fall.
You had a sort of vision about the flux capacitor, which is the heart of the time machine.
Remember when I was mad because how crappy it was that the book earlier described Doc's vision as of being the entire DeLorean? Well, I guess Gipe had the same realization part way through writing the book, and so he changed it, but of course this book was written in 1984. Well before the invention of the backspace key, alas. Doc is skeptical when Marty says,
"How else could I know about that unless I'm from the future?"
And Doc is all,
"You could be a mind reader."
And Marty is all,
"Yes, but I'm not. I'm just an ordinary guy you happen to confide in."
And I kinda love that both the characters admit that mind reading is a valid possibility here. I would love to see police procedurals where the action stops when both the suspect and the interrogator admit that this would be simpler if they were mind readers, but they're not, they're just a couple of ordinary guys, so that's not an option right now, and let's proceed. Doc is intrigued and asks where the time machine is. Marty says he stashed it because
it's so flashy looking, I couldn't drive it around the streets without getting a lot of attention. Maybe the cops would even arrest me.
And Doc suddenly decides he's had enough of Book Marty's cop-based hypotheticals and says, "Good night, future boy!" and closes the door in his face. Okay. So this is the point in the movie where Marty says,
You were standing on your toilet and you were hanging a clock and you fell and you hit your head on the sink, and that's when he came up with the idea for the flux capacitor, which is what makes time travel possible.
And then Doc decides to let him in because how does he know that? But Book Marty already dropped that bomb earlier in the conversation, where it failed to convince Doc. So the timeline has shifted, and we're about to find out what happens in a world where Marty is fresh out of ways to convince Doc. Let's read on, shall we? Well, first, Marty stands silently in front of the door
for nearly a minute.
Then, Marty steals the key to Doc's garage, under the potted plant. Remember? And walks slowly into town. And eats a burger and drinks some Pepsi. And watches
the hands on the courthouse tower clock slowly move towards 4 o'clock.
And gets bored. And decides to take in a movie. Hold on to your seats, because this action-packed scene continues. Page 121. So Marty decides to go see that movie that he saw advertised earlier, The Atomic Kid.
He cheerfully pays his 50 cents.
That's what it says.
And the movie is pretty lame.
That's what it says, and Marty wishes there were TV commercials as a way of relieving the tedium. We get a short, irrelevant plot summary.
A prospector becomes immune to atomic radiation and tracks down communist spies.
Which is too bad because IMBD's summary is way better. A uranium prospector is eating a peanut butter sandwich in the desert where atom bomb tests are being done. He becomes radioactive, and helps the FBI break up an enemy spy ring. And anyway, when the movie's over, Marty notices that it's dark outside. So he walks to his new house where he left the car earlier. And then he gets into the DeLorean. And thus Marty's slow-paced plan is revealed. He's gonna show Doc the car and all his 80s stuff to convince him. Finally, this plot is shifting into high gear. But first, Marty decides to have a nap. Not making this up. Marty reclines the chair and falls asleep and dreams of being
pursued by professional gamblers eager to pick his brain for future knowledge that could be turned into money. Police and government officials wanted to silence him in order to prevent panic.
Lorraine, who is
after his body.
Yep. And then he has the oddly non-specific dream of having
no way to return to 1985, to Jennifer, and his friends.
Which wakes him up. And that's where this page ends. Gipe's basing this novel on a screenplay, and you've got to love a plot for a movie that slows down so much that the main character actually gets bored and starts killing time by himself watching a movie. And then after the movie he's still bored, so he goes for a walk and then has nappy times. It's kind of amazing.